Hello again, and welcome to the Gaming News Canada Show. I'm your host, Steve McAllister. When we raised the curtain on this weekly conversation about the business of sports betting and gaming back in the winter of 2021, a handful of people were incredibly generous, sharing their time and expertise with us. First on Clubhouse, then on Twitter Spaces, and later on LinkedIn Audio before landing on the current platforms of Substack and YouTube. One of those good folks that I talk about is Phill Gray, the former sports trader, Sports Interaction, Beau Vivant, expert golfer, and the fellow who makes his return to the podcast for this episode. Hey, Phil, it's been far too long. How's your summer going?
Well, you're very kind on that expert golfer acronym there, Steve. But great. Boy, we've been stifling in the heat here in Montreal, but we always like to say January is coming.
Hey, Phil, listen, we appreciate you taking time from your day job over the lunch hour in Montreal to join us. Lots to cover, so let's get right to it because since we last talked, there's obviously lots going on in Canada, notably in Ontario and Alberta. And in last week's newsletter, Dave Briggs reported on the latest results from iGaming Ontario. June, not surprisingly, a bit quieter than a really raucous May in terms of both online gaming and sports betting. I think over $8 billion now generated by the market since it launched in April 2022, about $1.6 billion in tax revenue for the Province Ontario. Phil, just some thoughts on what you continue to see with Ontario?
Oh, certainly, though. I mean, those revenues were not unexpected. I mean, that was certainly the forecast, and they're matching, or at some points absolutely exceeding. Again, what regulation brought to Ontario and bringing in the big American books, FanDuel and DraftKings, hugely popular, leading the way. So again, I don't think there's any surprise there. I think it's being very well managed. There's been a few blips on the screen, but I think the regulators in Ontario and the books have adjusted accordingly. And boy, the landscape just is thriving. It's it's really something to watch, Steve, as we see the numbers grow.
Hey, Phil, I know we've talked about this on the show in the past, but just, because we've got you today, June, I think I go the report, 88% of the handle now is coming from online gaming. We led last week's newsletter with the first half results from BetMGM in 2025, and their CEO, Adam Greenblatt, again, talked about the success of iGaming and the continued push by BetMGM and other operators in the U.S. to expand beyond the 7 states that currently offer iGaming. Again, that gap, 88% gambling on online casino games, some 11%, 10% on sports betting. Does that surprise you, that discrepancy?
No, I mean that's something you've always seen in online gaming. We could always say if we take $1 in the sports book, we're going to take $4 in the casino. That's been an industry standard since I started 20 plus years ago. So no surprise there whatsoever. You will see generally in the sports book you'll see it's the sports better, generally higher stakes, more in it for the long term. About 50% of sportsbook bettors, they're more in it for the long term. It's the long haul for them. You do see in casino, you'll see more of a recreational play, smaller stakes, people in and out. Certainly you have your long-term casino players, but it's more of a recreational thing in the casino, and they come in and out. But again, the flow of new clients coming in is it's just it's not very predictable. Sign-ups in casino are as opposed to sportsbook, again, they far outweigh what you would see.
Hey, Phil, just mention again, as always with the IGO numbers, I don't include the numbers that are being coming out of OLG. But I just, one question I did have is, there's so much talk right now about the booming regulated gaming industry, not just Ontario, but with the provincial lottery and gaming corps across the rest of Canada. I just wonder, do you think there's a corresponding boom that's going on with offshore / illegal operators as well? Like, do you think there's never been more online gambling than there is in 2025?
Oh, absolutely, Stephen. Yeah, I mean, it's coming to the forefront of the social culture, whereas before it was, kind of seen as a scourge and hidden. You weren't supposed to talk about your gambling or your gaming, but now it's become an accepted form of recreational use. Now that could be, broken down into many areas, as has been addressed with responsible gaming initiatives that they were in place, even at offshore books, a decade ago, 15 years ago, they had, somewhat of their own RG practices. But now you see, I mean, that's spawned a business on its own, has it not? RG. So, yeah, again, it's not unpredictable what we're seeing. I mean, it's and especially given the rise in people's access and people's ability and acumen to understand technology. Look, 15 years ago we didn't even have phones, did we? I mean, they were kind of new. Did everybody even have a computer? No. Now it's just part of our fabric. So, again. There's really no surprise to see the numbers just continue to grow, and they will. I don't see a ceiling yet.
I think we all agree that the responsible gaming piece is an extremely important one, and we had Harry Levant on the podcast recently, and last month at the Canadian Gaming Summit with Sarah McCarthy and Leighton McDougall from the Responsible Gambling Council joined us, and um, I guess my question is, and as you say, I mean, it really, there's obviously, there should be lots of concern about problem gambling and having mechanisms in place from regulators to operators to anybody else with pardon the bad pun skin in the game. But at the same time, as you point out, this is kind of where we are now, Phil. Like wasn't that long ago that you or I didn't have Twitter accounts, and we'd never, Instagram wasn't a thing. And it's funny. I was telling someone last week when I worked at the NHL Players Association back in the mid '90s, we were one of the first sports organizations to launch a website. And in 1995 isn't that long ago, and it just feels like gambling you loop in today with going to a concert or going
Yeah,
to a restaurant or going to a festival. I mean, it's just going to a sporting event. I mean, it's just another industry that's competing for that entertainment dollar.
yeah, and again, you go. It's technological access. Look, when I started in 2003, I mean, I think I had probably been on a desktop PC like maybe half a dozen times in my life, and I'm not kidding, right? I had no idea what tools were, or how to navigate around and get my own settings and set up a user account and and deal with an administration back end in a site I was working for. The curve was steep, but now I mean, look, everybody's. It's just our access to information and our access to forms of entertainment and everything else in life it's right there at your fingertips. So why wouldn't gambling thrive and gaming thrive in that environment?
Are there things that you like as someone who once worked for an operator that you like that's being done on the responsible gaming front, and is there a priority in your mind where something could be done better?
Um, well, it goes to I mean, there's been the kind of this assumption that a lot of the operators that have been operating for a couple of decades didn't have KYC commitments and obligations. Now it's nowhere as strict and as here as it is now, but it was always in their best interest to KYC, know your client, and be able to gauge their practices and be able to give them options, opt-outs for breaks, and and for family members to come in as well. I mean, there's still a number of non-regulated sites. If a family member can come in and call up their customer service department and say, so and so has a problem, and that the account will be immediately closed. Not all gray market operators, but most will, because they're in their own interest, in terms of clients can get into with a gaming problem, can get into financial trouble, and then start initiating chargebacks, which are extremely costly to any operator. So yeah, I mean, and there's compliance factors now in the regulation market. Certainly, like I say, the guidelines are a lot stricter, are a lot more in depth. Proof of funds, that's something that's come about in the last couple of years that wasn't there before. You have to be able to prove, your source of income, and that your credit rating, not exactly, but proof of funds. That you can actually, what you're wagering, you can actually afford. Is that always strictly enforced by even in the regulated sectors? I would say mostly, but not all the time.
Hey, the other piece of that too, or a piece of that, Phill, is VIP initiatives, and it's something that you've talked about on the podcast in the past. Jeff Zakotny brought it up. He was on a panel I moderated at the Canadian Gaming Summit last month, and at the end of the panel, we kind of asked what's the kind of issues that are front of mind with people, and Jeff, who was the only journalist in that panel, mentioned VIP programs and whether or not there might be changes made moving down the road. And I just wonder, your thoughts today on VIP programs, and is there a role for them, or do changes need to be made?
Well, as you know, Stephen, I'm always candid, and I think that's why I think I was on the suspension list, wasn't I, with the podcast?
Definitely not.
Well, I went through the Ontario compliance process, and the rules and regulations that were to be put in place as far as VIP loyalty program bonuses, limits, and everything that's attached to that, and they're quite strict. And I will say that I do know that in many instances there are some very large operators, not only in Canada but the United States, that are in violation of those terms, and it's not being enforced. I won't go into the specifics or the weeds, but there's the VIP program is I always choose my words carefully here, Steve. It can be predatory at times. Now, my kind of argument is, well, we have proof of funds now, and that, well, because someone can justify that they can, come in and bet $250,000 and lose $250,000, and make 5 and 6 figure bets, which are accepted online right now by regulated books, big books. Because they can afford it, does that mean that is not a problem, gambler? Now, I think, if you're going to go online and you're going to bet, $6,000 on a NFL game or an NHL game, I think you have a gaming problem. That's totally my opinion. Whether you can afford it or not, I think it's going to be addressed, as it has been in the UK, with their white paper from last year, and there's a number of measures coming in. I think you will see it. I mentioned this last year too as well. I think you will see it in the next year to two, as legislators get involved. We're going to come to a point, with RG, that client balances are going to be capped. Limits will be capped globally, and say, and go to client balances. If somebody's got more, I think in the UK now it's going to be £1,000. If you've got more than £1,000 in your account on a win, then you have to be paid out. You can't stay there. Right? And limits too. And we've talked about this many times. The subjective course of books deciding who gets what limit. It's an unfair business practice in some instances. I get the business model, is about driving revenue and that. But then to me, it's very contradictory to responsible gaming practices and the whole itinerary that's been laid out there.
Yeah, and I would think having a centralized self-exclusion program too would help as well, both on the responsible gaming front and also with
I I still
problem gambling. Yep, go ahead, Phil.
we spoke about this before. I think it's incumbent on the sports book to have a very solid, publicized, and robust self-exclusion program, rather than involving another agency where somebody has to go. And if somebody's got a gaming problem, do they want to have to sign up to another site, give their details, stuff like that, which are going to be spread all around, all that. It's kind of it can be a very self-conscious point for someone in their lives when they're into an addictive practice that do they want to make it public? Now, of course, those details are kept private, but to the person that's doing it, that's what are they just going to say? Well, no, I'm just not going to bother. Whereas if they can call up, my sports book and say, you know what, I need a break. And most books have that in place, and it is advertised somewhat in terms and conditions and help center and that. I think it's incumbent on the sports books to monitor, enforce, and promote that.
Phil, isn't there also a responsibility by government? I mean, again, you talked a few minutes ago about this explosion of online gambling now, and it's part and parcel of the world that we live in. And in Ontario, we know that $1.6 billion in tax revenue. We know that the lottery and gaming corporations across the country are doing quite well and reporting record revenues year over year. And we do know that we live in a time where there is more mental health illness being identified or being diagnosed, and we do know that the problem gambling is an issue. Is there not a responsibility on provincial governments that are taking in this tax money to lend a hand and to tell that story?
I think yes, in a sense that I think that because gaming and gambling on this scope is certainly new, but I go to you, Steve. I could go to my corner store right now and buy 15,000 649 tickets if I wanted, and 10,000 scratch tickets. Is anybody gonna say, hey Phil, maybe I need a break? Or I could go to the LCBO and 7 days a week and get 326ers and 4 bottles of shots. And is everybody going to say, maybe you should go to AA, Phil? No, right? So it gets to the point of not to discuss a larger discussion of government involvement in people's everyday lives. We live in a social democracy. You're free to do whatever you want, and everybody makes their own choices. Nobody's forcing you to do anything. When certainly a social problem arises, yes, it certainly needs to be addressed by government, and I think we have a lot of social service programs in place here in Canada that a lot of countries don't have, and we pay for it in our tax dollar, and happy to pay it because we have a social security net here in this country that helps the less fortunate. So I mean, at what point is government going to become draconian with recreational abuse by people? I don't know. Like, how do you regulate it? I don't know. Not that smart.
Hey, I want you to put on your operator's hat for a second, and looking at Alberta, and it's pretty well. Adam Greenblatt from BetMGM mentioned this week that they expect that Alberta will launch an open market in 2026. We'll probably know more this fall in terms of a more precise timeline. I guess if you were working for an operator who wanted to go in Alberta, like what is it are there some things that you would like to see the provincial government there do? So maybe some lessons learned from Ontario or some tweaks of what Ontario did.
I'm not on the Ontario compliance process. the monitoring and the process, again, sorry, repeating myself out here. It was tedious. It was long. And I mean, boy, there was a million boxes to check, on the back end. Server checks, algorithmic checks, everything through every department, through customer service, through trading and all that. So I understand in some ways. I mean, Alberta's doing their own. They're not just copy and pasting Ontario, I would assume, because it's taking them so long. Are they going to make some tweaks to it on their own? Boy, I don't know. It was so exhaustive, the Ontario. I don't know what more you could ask from an operator. What's happening, and you will see, I think, in Alberta as well. I think you're going to see a lot of the operators that jumped into Ontario, beyond the big 4 or 5, might not even bother. Obtaining a market share is extremely hard. We saw what happened with in Ontario. A bunch of books just dropped out. They couldn't compete. Right? You've got FanDuel, you got DraftKings, 365, and now BetMGM pulling up the rear and really making a push. So how are you going to compete with them? And it's no longer by advertising dollar with all the restrictions. And the biggies already have their deals in place with the major media outlets. How are you going to outspend them? You can't, right? Alberta is a very sophisticated gaming market in that it's historical. The population there has been involved in it in a long time. Tons of brick and mortar casinos there. Tons of the books have been operating there for 2.5 decades. People already have accounts at some of the ones that there's tons of books that are operating there right now, unregulated. They're operating in Ontario that are regulated. Let's not forget that. So, but then FanDuel and DraftKings have the brand, right? I mean, it's 2 great names, 2 great brand names. Are you going to see a big switch from people to there just because it's regulated? And also, will you see Alberta go after some of the books that choose not to license and regulate and go with cease and desist orders and try and push them out? Hasn't happened in Ontario too much. I know a lot of books that are operating in there that are not licensed and regulated.
Hey, Phill, there's a lot of stuff going on in the U.S. right now, which I'm sure you've been following. Prediction markets, sweepstake casinos, increased tax rates. As I mentioned earlier, continued advocacy by the legal gaming industry for more legal iGaming across the U.S. The one thing I did want to talk to you for a second was micro betting, and there's proposed legislation in New Jersey to ban micro betting. I was really interested. Chris Grove, someone who we both know and someone who I respect a lot in the industry,
absolutely,
had a post on X at the end of last week, and I'll read you the actual post. It's quote, "Micro betting is not an actual thing. People keep using it as a term that means a specific thing. It is not and does not. Therefore, it's a completely inappropriate foundation for legislation. Bills like this are a waste of time and a gift to the unregulated market." Thoughts on that?
Well, certainly I would agree with him on that. I don't know how you can say a sports book can offer one thing and they can't offer another. And when it's basically, it's live betting. It's in-play betting. It's no different than being able to bet on, is Steve going to beat Phill on, Masters 2027 hole 1? It's the same thing, but is Steve going to chunk his next shot? Is Phill going to duck hook it? So they're splitting hairs there. Certainly, micro betting, with the technology, again, to go back to that, at such an advanced stage, and what they're able to offer now, with, as you and I were talking, with such a reduced amount of latency, it's become a casinofication of sports betting, which is what we've been trying to do in the industry for a long time: have people more engaged and on the site, and playing more, and that's the goal. So I would agree with Chris on that. How can you say you can do one thing and you can't do another? What it has, and we've seen, look with the Louis Ortiz, and just last night, Emmanuel Clace has been involved in that controversy about the next pitch. is it going to be a ball or a hit batter? And they've got 2 instances that were brought up by integrity betting monitors, which are a prerequisite now for any regulated gaming book to have in place. So that action is caught very quickly. And how much could you get down? Generally, these micro betting markets, the limits are much lower, and the event is only going to be there unless it's even if it's in between innings. What have you got? 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It's certainly any unusual action, as we saw with the Louis Ortiz case, is it's flagged and caught immediately. So I don't know that there's an argument that our players who are making $7-8 million a year or more, gonna throw a pitch to satisfy a group of 5 or 6 gamblers who want to get down on it and make some money. You could maybe do it once or twice, but you're certainly, again, look, he got caught right. It was flagged right away. Whether or not there's any guilt in it with Ortiz, I have no idea, but it was certainly flagged as unusual action. That goes towards. It's a separate argument from is micro betting somewhat predatory on gamblers? Again, I don't know. It's a larger question, I think.
Yeah, and I wonder, just to your comments a few minutes ago, can you are there restrictions that you can put in place around micro betting and or
Limits.
in-play betting and limits, right?
Limits. And I've gone to that, many times, where sports have been caught with their pants down on secondary markets and on errors and stuff like that, because their limits are far too large. So then something in micro betting, where it's only there, the price, it might be a volatile price. You might see some uneven action. Why would you be taking $5,000 on a bet like that or something? No. I mean, really, if I was in a trading operation now on micro bets, I wouldn't be taking more than globally $100 a client. Not a client specific. I would probably set it like $100 a bet.
Yeah. Hey, Phill, just for our audience, I mean, in terms of in-play betting, is that something that is, and again, I'm pretty sure we've talked about this before, but just refresh my memory. In-play betting, is that something that's popular with experienced / professional gamblers, or is a disparity between those people that are betting with sports books and then the casual sports fan, someone like me who might bet $2 on a Leafs game?
Yeah, experienced and professional bettors, they're looking for value and looking for edge, and they'll usually have quite a number of books that they can compare prices. And there's a lot of odds feed providers out now that will automatically notify you when certain sports books have a value bet. But the consensus line has tightened so much, you're seeing less of that. And I just saw some interesting. Really, just this morning, looking at a number of books are reporting that micro betting right now is about 60% of their total MLB handle. That's wild, right? So it's tough though when you've got that short of a window to if somebody's hanging plus 120 and everybody else is hanging 100, to get in there, and get your money down and lock it in, without an odds change. Right. It's tough. It's a grind. Certainly there are a lot of pro bettors that do it, sit there 8 hours a day. And like I say, they've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sports books open on multiple screens, and they're looking for value, and they try and get in and hit it as best they can. I don't think you can get ARBs down that much anymore, arbitrage betting, where you can guarantee a win on when you bet either side. That used to be very predominant in online gaming, but again, because of the feed providers and the consensus line, everybody is pretty much, there aren't those arbitrage chances there anymore that there were in past years. So I know a number of players that made a life out of it, a career. Not anymore.
Hey, Phill, before we let you go, I just want to get the thoughts again, just on, it feels like the gambling world's being turned a little bit upside down right now in the U.S. with, Kalshi and Robinhood and Polymarket and all the legal wranglings that are going on around predictions markets. The fight against sweepstakes casinos. There's still a bun fight going on with daily fantasy, especially in California, where the indigenous communities are taking action. Like what again, just putting on your operator's beret. Like what? How do you feel about predictions markets and sweepstakes casinos and daily fantasy?
Well, I mean, the dispute is it's only just begun. It's going to get to a lot higher levels of judiciary decisions. It's already, the recent ruling that overturned a decision, and Kalshi is kind of trumping that up as we're not about sports betting. You're not betting against the house. You're betting against somebody else. Well, there's still a fee, and a variant fee for people to go in and take liquidity. So from my trading perspective, that's big. I'm sorry. That's big, right? Now, if you had charged like a one-time fee just to join the site, and then the players can go and play against each other, and Kalshi has no other business in it, then I guess you could make the argument that they're not a sports book, but certainly they're a sports book. It certainly is sports betting. Now, are they going to be able to compete without buying a platform? No, because all they're offering is basically money lines. Yes, no, right? So now you can go to DraftKings or FanDuel, and you have 9 million bets you can make on every game, every outcome, multi-runners and that. You couldn't do that with prediction market, right? You couldn't do correct score, with prediction market and have people bet. I guess you could, but it would be very laborious and tedious and very hard to manage. But again, you're still charging. The fee is per transaction for someone taking liquidity, not someone going in and resting, but someone going and taking liquidity. You're still paying vig. Now they're basically operating, at about a minus 105 line, where most sports books operate at minus 110. So, in my mind, they're a reduced vig sports book with no liability. Hard not to call that sports betting. I'm sorry.
And then just quickly, in terms of the sweepstakes casinos, like is the legal industry right in taking a stance against that?
Well, it's cutting into it's cutting into the regulated market, because you're not allowed to offer sweepstakes at a regular sports book, and these guys are, and they're not paying any tax or any licensing fees or anything like that. So again, there's a case, and as we discussed with the revenues we're talking about now, the pie is just it's become one big giant huge birthday cake, right, Steve? So everybody wants a piece, and they're going to guard and protect the pieces they have, and there's talk, DraftKings and FanDuel talk about, maybe having their own prediction markets. But then I don't know how you do that, because it's a yes/no market. It's a money line. So you're going to have a prediction market. You're still going to be, and it's reduced vig. It's just a reduced vig money line, which is going to be competing against your money line that you have in the regular sports book. I don't. It's only just begun. There's so much money out there, and you're starting to get the judiciary branch involved. It's going to get messy, put it that way.
That is Phill Gray. If Gaming News Canada had a bureau in Montreal, Phill might be our bureau chief there. Hey, Phill, seriously, really, really great to have you back on the podcast. Always very grateful for you sharing your wisdom and expertise with us. And listen, enjoy the rest of your summer, and we'll look forward to getting back together again in the fall.
I think I served my 40-game suspension with you, so I can, I'm good to play now. Is that what?
Yeah, and there won't be there's no carryover either, Phill. You get to go back and start from ground zero again.
All right. Well, give us a shout when NFL starts. We'll certainly have lots to talk about, Steve.
We'll do that for sure. That's it for this episode of the Gaming News Canada show. Thanks again to Phill Gray for joining us. As always, you can find us at gamingnewscanada.ca and also on our YouTube channel. Thank you for everybody for your support of Gaming News Canada, and we will see everybody again very soon.